because there appears to be something wrong with it.
All right.
Cancel. Let me see what that does, Mark. Because I see the thing that says live.
We're live. I'm Mark Anthony. This other voice you're hearing is Mr. Rick Rosen. Want to say hi, Rick?
Hi, Rick.
Okay, cool. All right.
Was it like a test?
That's it.
Because I have failed them tests before. Like, what's your name? Shit, let me check.
This is
I was hoping you knew. Let me see.
This will be a long
Harry.
one.
No.
What do you want it to be? This is a
Hi, Mark.
podcast. You may hear it on several websites. I run thevegastourist.com podcast. Rick and I do a
By the way, it sounds right? Like you're broadcasting from Mars. Just so you know. I'm just saying.
Rick is the head cook and bottle washer at Good Sports Media. We try to do a somewhat weekly podcast on sports. Somewhat.
Is there two E's in that weekly or an E and an A? Wait a minute, there's a bird flying around in here. Oh, there it is. Oh, I got it.
Okay, all right.
Do you remember the good old days at the Hustler Club, Mark?
Oh God. Flashbacks.
Some people call those flashbacks, and some nightmares. Some have other meanings. Interesting week here, Mark.
Once in a while we talk sports.
Boobs and booze and good sports. If you think about it, all three of those things have two O's in them that somewhat look like boobs. So I think it was a natural boobs, booze, and good sports. It was so alliterative. You know what I mean? Anyway, Mark,
okay. We are here to talk about Muhammad Ali and his impact on Vegas. Sound good?
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. And Muhammad Ali's appearances here in Las Vegas were fairly nondescript. He regained the heavyweight title here from Leon. Let me see. I think he lost here to regain the title. His very first fight here in Las Vegas was way back in 1961. Duke Sabadong, and that was at the old convention center. And and Jerry Tarkanian kind of finally put the nail in the coffin there, and they built the Thomas and Mack. And Muhammad Ali's imprint here in Las Vegas went way beyond any of the fights that he had here, Mark. When Muhammad Ali was stripped of the title, cable TV was a real oddity. I was aware of it simply because my folks went to school in Alamosa, Colorado, and they had cable vision going up and over the mountains. You couldn't get regular TV. And so we had cable vision up there. And when Muhammad Ali fought Joe Frazier, even though that was in New York City, that fight was the first mega fight. It was the first fight of any significance that you could see on closed circuit pay-per-view and those types of things, Mark. And so that changed the landscape for not only boxing, but mixed martial arts and a lot of other things that have kind of cashed in on the pay-per-view thing. Some music events cash in on that. I mean, there's a lot of ways that people have done, and a lot of that you trace directly back to Muhammad Ali.
Exactly. So, and that's why I wanted to do this with you, okay? For the listeners from my podcast, from the VegasTourist.com podcast, are probably wondering why you. Of all of the people to talk Muhammad Ali in Las Vegas, why did I choose Rick Rosen? Other than he's a really good friend of mine. We got drunk very, very well many times on the air. However, but it's because when
I vaguely remember some of those moments.
but
was I there?
But when Sazzy and I first launched the Vegas Tourist podcast, and we were at our first time we attended the Pro Bull Riders World Finals, we somehow got stationed at your table, God forbid. I don't know, it's the one nearest the exit. But anyway, you were a guy who talked sports
for a good reason.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you talk sports differently than what normal people talk sports about. And 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 I've got to say, the first time that we sat with you and you were doing the whole one-on-one with people and all that, I'm like, okay, here's a guy who's read way too many trivia books. And then you invited us to your house. And walking into your house was like walking into a sports Vegas shrine. Okay, you just wall to wall.
Yeah.
Even in your current house, you still have, to your left side, you've got some of that stuff there. And
some of it didn't focus. Those up there are a lot of credentials and tickets from places. If you look on the door there, that's actually a scorecard from a Simon Brown fight. And Simon Brown was a world champion, and he came to fight in Puebla, Colorado. And I actually autographed the round card for me. He couldn't fight. He tried to fight with a week and a half after a previous fight in which he got knocked out. And so the percussion, they simply asked me, did I know where there was a good neurologist? And I said, yeah, we have some in here. We have some here. Why? And they said, well, he got knocked out a couple weeks ago. We want to make sure he's okay to fight. And so I had to go over to the man who was promoting the fight and say, excuse me, but I just want to let you know the guy's on a 30-day suspension in any of the 50 states in the nation that have athletic commissions. We probably shouldn't use him in our main event. So, yeah. But anyway, those are autographs. You're right, Mark, and I have different things. One of the worst losses of my divorce was I had a pennant autographed by Muhammad Ali. And it was he and George Foreman from the Rumble in the Jungle. And Ali had autographed it under the wrong of the fighter. He autographed it actually under the George Foreman fighter on the thing. And when I got divorced, I was going to lose my storage unit, and I had to sell that pennant. And I sold it for a couple $100, which is more than what I paid for it. So yeah. I mean that it all comes with the territory there when you're a collector and those kind of things. But that probably hurt me about as much as you talked about my memorabilia. That hurt me as much as anything to lose out of the museum. So, but Ali was so special, so different, Mark.
But it was so funny because we sat down at your kitchen table. We turned on the recorder, and I will find that link, and I will put it in the show notes. But Sazzy just pointed to something and said, "What's that?" And you just went down, and we just let you roll. And yeah. The one thing that I always have loved about you, Rick, is you just you drop names and the trivia details that nobody else talks about. Okay, George Foreman did this, but the ring guy who was blah, 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 did this, this, and that,
Yeah.
And the photos that you have and the credentials that you have just boggles the mind when it comes to this. So it's like, okay, if there's anyone that I can talk sports, Muhammad Ali, Vegas with, it's Rick Rosen.
Well, thank you, Mark. And I will say this, it's one of the most humbling things to look at the stuff that I have, at my credentials, at my photos, at the things that I have surrounded myself with, and have my career in media, whether it's photography or radio or television and all the different things that God has blessed me with to be able to do. And some of them are iconic, and some of them are iconic because they beat an icon, and then they Tom Brady took over for a guy, a quarterback that got hurt, and so now the next guy comes along as the icon. There was Sugar Ray Robinson, and in my opinion, one of, if not the greatest boxer of all time. I think he would have beat Floyd Mayweather at least more often than not. That's the kind of boxer that Sugar Ray Robinson was. And there was this lull. The heavyweights have always been the main draw, the main attraction. Some of that has to do with market, something that doesn't get a lot of notice, in that in every other division in boxing, guys are of equal weight when they, at least at the weigh-in. Sometimes they fluctuate because a big guy will be going against a little guy, and they get the water back in their system, and they rehydrate, and so they are bigger. But they're not bigger ever by much more than 10 pounds. In the heavyweights, it doesn't matter. So you can outweigh a guy like 60, 70 pounds and still get in the ring with him. That's the only division in boxing. So when Muhammad Ali won the light heavyweight gold medal at the Olympics, he was very young to do that. He didn't have that years after years. He fought a lot of fights in the amateurs. He was busy, but it didn't take him a lot of time by the orbits around the sun, and so he came into pro boxing very young. And the things that Muhammad Ali did were, as he grew, he didn't lose the speed. He didn't lose those things. And just as they've talked about the Raiders coming to Las Vegas, Mark, Muhammad Ali was the perfect style for Vegas. He was Vegas, baby. Sonny Liston was beat the crap out of you, old Vegas, old mafia, break your legs, do that kind of stuff. It was just, yeah, he's a big thug, heavyweight guys, just got out of prison and blah, blah, blah. He was very effective. Sonny Liston wasn't a totally bad man, although he spent time in prison for violent crimes, and then got out and became the heavyweight champion of the world. Muhammad Ali had the chance to be the Great White Hope for all intents and purposes. He won the Olympics. He stood on there. He was loquacious. He was very personable. He had that charisma and that charm. And here in the midst of the Vietnam War, he was not shy about saying how wrong it was, and that he was opposed to going to Vietnam to free people over there halfway around the world when his people weren't free here. And it made people think. White folks, I think for the vast majority of us, had never had that thought before, and Muhammad Ali brought that. And you're talking about a guy who was considered to be a functional illiterate. I mean, close to an idiot in some of the dealings that he had before he became the champion, and he was just not overly educated, but he was certainly no dummy. And Muhammad Ali played the game as perfectly as it can be played, where people are big fans, Mark, of reality shows. Muhammad Ali started that. It was that reality show. It was him going head to head with Howard Cosell on a weekly or bi-weekly basis on Wide World of Sports. It was Muhammad Ali doing the dance in the end zone. Billy White Shoes Johnson came after Muhammad Ali, but I don't know that he would have been in the same dance doing dude in the end zone without Muhammad Ali doing what he did in boxing. When he did the Ali shuffle and he started doing the moonwalk without and then hurting you at the end. It wasn't the Michael Jackson version, but that was the original moonwalk, if you think about it, and it was Muhammad Ali's invention. And he was so quick, and in that heavyweight division that was plotting, big guys who just stood there and beat the crap out of each other. It wasn't that pretty boxing purist thing. And here comes Ali into the heavyweight division and did that boxing thing. And so that fit perfectly into our Las Vegas mindset, Mark. I think, just like I say, the Raiders are the perfect fit, in my opinion, for Las Vegas, much more so than it would be if the Cardinals simply came from Phoenix and moved here. I don't think it would be near the same as having the Cardinals as having the Raiders. It would be great with either one. We would take an expansion team. All that being said, the Raiders are the perfect fit, and I believe Ali was the perfect fit for Las Vegas, even though he did not fight extensively here. He fought, I think, 7. And towards the end of his career, the last fight he fought was against Larry Holmes, and more than Larry Holmes cried in that fight, Muhammad Ali should not have gotten in there. He was out of shape. He was old, and Larry Holmes was worried about killing Muhammad Ali, and he was crying, and he was just looking at the referee stop the fight, and it didn't happen. Ali wouldn't go down. If Ali had just hit the canvas one time, the beating would have been over. So
okay, but see here's my whole thing on this is, before Ali came along, the Muhammad Ali that we know and we remember, the whole Cassius Clay thing, people don't really know very much about it. But it was as Cassius Clay when, as my notes said, that to promote his first fight here in 1961, he was on a radio show with Gorgeous George, the wrestler, and Gorgeous George was that flamboyant, I am the greatest wrestler in the world, blah 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 blah, and that's
self-promoter.
And that's where Muhammad Ali picked that up. The thing with Muhammad Ali is he could back it up. Okay.
That's right. He's got a famous saying, Mark, that I like to quote is, "It ain't bragging if you can do it."
Right.
And one of the things that he learned from Gorgeous George is you get paid for every ass that's in a seat. So it don't matter to you whether they come to see you win or come to see you get your ass kicked. It does not matter. They still bought a ticket and are sitting there. There's an ass in a seat, and you get a share of that. So Muhammad Ali was really the first boxer to really understand that. I think the only other guy that really had that was Jack Johnson. And I think there's a lot of similarities between Jack Johnson, the first black champion, and Muhammad Ali, the first of the free black champions. Everybody else, I think Muhammad Ali knew he was that transition guy. And so he did the whole thing by changing his name, converting to Islam, and aligning himself with several. He was the middleman. Honest to God, they had the black summit of athletes that got together to support him about not going into the Vietnam. We've got the picture somewhere here, Mark. But Jim Brown is there. The 8-time rushing champion in the NFL, the man in the National Football League. Bill Russell, the 8 or 9-time, I think 11 grand total, world champion with the Boston Celtics is there. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was still Lou Alcindor at the time, is in this photo, and 8 or 10 other guys there. But that's the pull that Muhammad Ali had. I think they were all drawn to him to be that man that was the Jackie Robinson of that next generation. Muhammad Ali loaded them all up on his back and fought and won. And, he maneuvered very, very well. Like I say, I think we're back to the reality show, Mark. And, you're here in Las Vegas. Everything's a frickin' game. People play games in the parking lot for a parking space that's up close. You can see the competitiveness in people, and I think Muhammad Ali embodied that for people, and just that braggadocio. Yeah, just like I say, Muhammad Ali was the embodiment of somebody showing their middle finger to the establishment. So, and that fits in with Las Vegas. We're Sin City. We're screw you. We are what we are.
And kind of like what you said, Ali was that focal point with modern television. Everyone had a television in their living room. Everyone watched ABC Wide World of Sports with Howard Cosell, and and all of a sudden there's a guy in Howard Cosell's face telling him, go screw yourself. I am the greatest guy in the world. And then you have Las Vegas, and up until that point, till all those things collided, people looked at Vegas as that's where mom and dad go to blow the kids' college fund. That's where you go to watch some old retired singer try to still make a living. And all of a sudden you've got people going, he's going to be in Las Vegas, kind of like NASCAR. People come here not for NASCAR, but they come here because NASCAR.
For the experience.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely, Mark. And it's always in addition. Everything in Vegas is, we're going to Vegas for this, in addition to, we're going to go to the casinos, we're going to go to the shows, we're going to do this and do that. It's not the same way in other places. And one of the things that I think history needs to look at is Muhammad Ali had a pretty decent relationship with the Beatles, and they both played at the convention center. Muhammad Ali boxed there, the Beatles played a concert there. They did a photo shoot with he and the Beatles together, and he just dominated them. You talked about people being in awe. He was not near as smitten with them as they were with him. And so here's this photo shoot, and there's this dominant Muhammad Ali there. And just the if you think of people our parents' age, worst nightmare. It's that the black folks aligned with the hippies and had some monster race that was going to, eat every good thing on earth. And that's, I think, that kind of embodied that rebel spirit did a lot for even though the man said, I'm all about the black man. I think it made so many white people reassess their values, Mark, that it did more for integration than it ever did for diversity and those kind of things. It opened the eyes of this side too. So and that, I think that speaks a lot to Muhammad Ali. He was a bunch of different things that are very hard to define. He was a Muslim, yet I think he was perceived as a man who had been a Christian and had grown up in a good Christian family, and somewhat, particularly for a young black man, a fairly middle class raising in Louisville, Kentucky, and yet he got into a poor man's sport, boxing. You don't really need much to learn how to box other than 2 fists and 2 feet and a head that either gets hit or doesn't, and that's why it's almost like soccer. You can fill a garbage bag with banana peels and play soccer. And so that's how boxing is. And I think Muhammad Ali was just that, always enjoyed being the one that stuck out. And he handled it well. It's almost like the Superman comics, Mark, where Superman had this incredible power, and did he use it for good or for evil? Muhammad Ali took, I believe it was under an hour with Saddam Hussein to get 15 American hostages released. And that's standing. You know what I mean? The Pope asks governments not to kill people. Would you just spare this one? You know what I mean? Just let this one go. And they're like, yeah, thanks. I know you're the Pope, but we're Oklahoma. We want to put drugs in the veins and kill the guy. And so Muhammad Ali got 15 hostages freed. So his reach was so much more. I mean, it was such a worldwide thing. And for him to come to Las Vegas and to, it was almost like a second hometown for him. It was like the boxing kind of thing for him. I don't think he was near as comfortable in places like Madison Square Garden as he was here in Las Vegas. It's a really odd thing, Mark. As an entire generation. When somebody passes, I think the last time I had a feeling like this, maybe it was when Robin Williams died. And you think, wow, he was a comic hero, and he was that iconic figure, but not near the presence that Muhammad Ali had. However, his presence is. You're talking about somebody who was by far and away the most recognizable man on earth, and certainly by name, far outnumbering Mao Zedong and Jesus Christ and Pele and whoever else. It was Muhammad Ali. And then everybody else got in line behind that. That's an amazing thing. That's an enormous amount of power, Mark, not to abuse.
I remember,
and he had his human frailties.
Well, I remember watching the opening ceremonies for the Olympics in Atlanta, and they were cool and all cool, but man, when they dropped that curtain down, and there's Muhammad Ali to light the cauldron. I think the whole world
and just rock them.
Oh my God, that was like just
who amongst us did not cry, and who amongst us did not rock a little bit as he was rocking? You just wanted to take his hand and guide him over to that flame, and then when you saw he could do it, there was such a sense of relief when he turned, because he looked like he was trembling too much. Like, oh shit, he's going to burn Atlanta down again, and as he turned, and you could just see that he had it, he had this, and he turned and he just kind of showed the flame, and what a unifying moment that was for our nation, Mark. And the bombing at those Olympics certainly got fair press, and whatever it was, or whatever the reason behind that is. That took away from that moment that I think would have been a more significant moment had they not had other things happen at that Olympics. But what a huge thing that was. You're talking about 29 years after he was stripped of his title for un-American things like refusing to be drafted, refusing to serve your country. He then got the highest honor you can get on American soil in that kind of atmosphere as an athlete. You do the final torch thing, you know what I mean? And I think it was hugely reconciliatory on parts of all types of people. Mark, the Olympic Committee has now always been known as a very generous, compassionate organization. And here Muhammad Ali was an espoused black power, almost a supremacist in that direction, a Muslim, not a lot of unpopular positions politically speaking, and yet here he is lighting the torch. So I think it was an absolute seminal moment.
Wow. One of the first things, just because this is how my mind works, but when I saw that he died, about the second thought is, I don't think Louisville is going to be ready for that funeral, because the guy touched every aspect of life around the world, from political leaders to religious leaders to, I don't think there's a category of people out there that he did not touch.
No. And the only point of reference I have for that, Mark, my friend, Chico Corrales died a year after he had fought Jose Luis Castillo in one of the, if not the greatest fight ever, at least the greatest 10th round ever. And when Chico died he was on a motorcycle and hit a vehicle that wasn't going, and they killed him. And his funeral was an absolute who's who, and it was here in Vegas, and it was an absolute who's who of boxing. I mean, there were officials, but the boxers, you literally had a whole wing of the Boxing Hall of Fame there at his funeral. You mentioned that Louisville's not going to be ready for this. I think people are going to come out of the woodwork to go to this funeral, and I don't know that in our lifetime, Mark, we'll ever see another one. I think very seriously that they should. I'm not certain they will, but I think they should dim the lights on the Strip because of Muhammad Ali's overall effect here in Las Vegas, not just the victories in the ring, but what he brought about. Like I say, that entertainment, that's what Vegas is all about, is entertainment. And here Muhammad Ali was the ultimate showman. It fit in, it just hand in hand with what Tark had with the Running Rebels here. As I said, I think the Raiders are the perfect fit that way. Muhammad Ali was that exact same thing. And, we should, well, if we're going to mention things, the Las Vegas 51s have always played that brand of baseball too. People don't realize that. You can get that, but they're the only ones that have been successful, Mark, because they understand that too. And they do a fine job down there, but it is that one thing that works here in Vegas, and it's that mindset. And Ali, I think, is the genesis of that for a lot of people. Gorgeous George, notwithstanding, quasi athletes, I don't think a lot of real athletes ever talked that kind of trash. And Ali brought it from wrestling, where most everybody knew that was fake, and so they could trash talk and whatever because that's what the script said. But like you said, Ali not only trash talked, he backed it up. If he said round 4, he could do it in round 4. He would hold guys up until the bell rang to start round 4. So it was just such a new thing, Mark.
Speaking of wrestling and all that, are you within arm shot of the MMA ticket with Muhammad Ali on it?
Am I within arm shot of the MMA and Muhammad Ali doing what?
The ticket stub you have of the MMA fight.
Oh yeah, I could. Yeah, I can. It's going to take to talk for what. Okay. How about let's take a break here?
Okay,
I'll be right back.
Break time. That's Rick Rosen, goodsportsmedia.com. I am Mark Anthony, thevegastourist.com. We are going over Muhammad Ali's impact on Vegas and sports in general, more importantly, sports. Of course, if you're coming to Vegas, the Vegas Tourist, we sell tours and we talk about Vegas, and I once in a while even trash Vegas. But so this is kind of a big thing here. Rick's got a memorabilia collection that is absolutely amazing. So There you go.
Okay, we're back. Good Sports, Mark Anthony, Rick Rosen, and I hope you can see this, Mark. This is from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, and that is a photo of Muhammad Ali and Antonio Inoki. And they were. It was in June 26th, 1976, in Tokyo, Japan. Here be the ticket stub from that event. I think that represents, Mark, as you know, I've said this before, the first ever MMA event. It is a mixed martial arts event, if ever there was one. And if you look at that photo, here, before I show you the thing, check out this photo. Muhammad Ali sat up on top of the ropes. And Inoki never got off his back. He kicked the crap out of Muhammad Ali's legs, and it ended up being a draw. And it was one of the most boring things. But again, Muhammad Ali was trying to cash in on that pay-per-view thing. Here, Mark, this pink ticket. I guess if I put it this way, I'm going to try to see if I can make sure and see it. Okay, that pink ticket is from that bout with Muhammad Ali and Antonio Inoki. And it's one of the pride and joys of it's really the only thing that I have for Muhammad Ali. If you look at the rest of this, the Hagler-Hearns fight, and that's autographed by Tommy Hearns. This is the Hagler-Hearns ticket. This is the ticket from Boom Boom Mancini and Dooku Kim, which tragically ended in Dooku. And was one of the main reasons we have 12-round championship fights instead of 15 any longer. Mike Tyson and George Foreman fought on the same card on this fight. And that's, Mark, I guess what you're looking at is what was brought about by Muhammad Ali. When I get these out, you look at Don King Productions and Caesar's Palace and associated with Top Rank. Everybody got together and said, "There's big money in this stuff.
Yes,
look, we can have George Foreman fight Adelson Rodriguez, and we can have Mike Tyson fight Henry Tillman, and they'll fight on the same card, and we can make people just pay, good money to see these guys fight tomato cans." Although Rodriguez was okay, he was a South American champion, but every one of these was a pay-per-view thing, Mark, and you trace that back to Muhammad Ali, and look what that's done. Look at what Floyd Mayweather generates on pay-per-view stuff here in Las Vegas, and what that generates for at least some of our 1%ers of our economy.
Do you think? Do you think the Mike Tyson, the fact that was part of Mike Tyson's downfall, is the fact that he was just a fighter. He was not the entertainer that we came to expect in big name boxing.
And I'll tell you why. Muhammad Ali lost to Joe Frazier and retained the popularity. When Mike Tyson lost, I mean, there were people that absolutely, okay, that's the end of him. And so he was his whole entertainment thing was knocking people senseless. Muhammad Ali put on the show the week before, the month before, the year before, the day after, the week. You know what I mean? It was that constant. You never knew what was going to happen with him, but you knew it was always going to be entertaining. Whether he was lifted up Howard Cosell's wig or his toupee, or going back and forth, or just saying something so totally off the wall that it would deflect the energy kind of away from the thing at hand, and he could handle it better than his opponents could. So when he made Sonny Liston so angry, I mean, my God, he parked outside of Sonny Liston's house and called his mother names and you're too chicken to fight me, and blah, blah, blah. This is in Denver. And the cops show up, and here's this crazy black man standing out front of Sonny Liston's house. He wasn't in front of the rabbi's house. He was in front of Sonny frickin' Liston's house screaming at him, and the cops really didn't know what to do. And so they made the fight. And it breathed new life into boxing, which had Joe Louis to Rocky Marciano to who? To who? Floyd Patterson, and then Sonny Liston, and with Ingemar Johansson stuck in the middle there. Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano, Floyd Patterson, Sonny Liston. It's not a good transition. And so here along comes Muhammad Ali, and he said, you thought Joe Louis was bad. I'm the greatest of all time. And I think that's always going to be subjective, Mark, whether he was or not. I certainly think he was the greatest heavyweight of all time, just because of what he was able to do that no one else in the heavyweight division before or since has. That jab, he had a lightweight's jab, man. And guys would be like, wait a minute, I'm not seeing this.
Well,
what is hitting me?
Well, see, that's just it. I mean, you look at quote unquote entertainers, you look at like okay, Chuck Norris. Okay, Chuck Norris was not the world's best karate fighter. He was eighth in the world, but he packaged what he could package and sold it to Hollywood. Okay, Muhammad Ali, overall, okay, in the ring, no, he might not have been the greatest, but because of the entertainment factor, it's the one that we remember. He was the loudest guy out there. He was the one that the cameras were focused on. He
was the guy with the machete walking through the forest first, Mark. That's the deal. He cleared the path for everybody else. It's easy to expand a path, but it's from the get-go. That's a tougher deal, and that's what Muhammad Ali had to do. He had to drag some of the people with him. Some of the people caught on real quick. A man named Don King caught on pretty darn quick. Hey, you know what? I think this fella's onto something. All I have to do is promote. What does that mean? What does that entail? How much trickeration goes into promoting? And Don King figured it out too. And I think Muhammad Ali always had an understanding and abidement of Don King because of that simple fact that he got it also. And I think that is some of the draw to Muhammad Ali and Las Vegas, is that Las Vegas is a town that gets it. Please show up. How much money are you bringing to lose? You could stand, the last gas station there, I guess, probably in Baker, where people hit before they head the last 100 miles or so into Vegas, Mark. And ask everybody that you headed to Vegas. Well, how much you bringing to lose? Oh, I got my paycheck. Oh, I got $500. I'm a donate 1,000 or whatever. You know what I mean? Muhammad Ali always got that Vegas got it, and that's all he was about. I'm going to separate you from your money. I'm going to smile and pat you on your back. Money. I'm going to give you entertainment. My entertainment in the ring's only guaranteed, even in a 15-round fight, was only guaranteed 45 minutes of fighting if they never came up for air. So that wasn't much money. That was much fun. So he'll entertain you beforehand. And sold tickets. I think that was his intent right off the bat, Mark, was to generate interest in the fight, which equated to money, which equated to popularity. I don't think he was in it for any just one reason, Mark. But I think one of the things that his wife, now his fourth wife now, was that he was bound and determined to do good with what he had been blessed with. And that he did not let this Parkinson's syndrome, people have been saying he had Parkinson's disease. He did not. They call it Parkinson's syndrome. The looks to the inside of your brain, from what I understand, are almost identical or incredibly close. And the effects are identical from one to the other. It's the cause to get to that point of brain damage, whether it's from a disease, Parkinson's disease, or it's from repetitive blows to the head, which leads you with Parkinson's syndrome. Now I believe they're calling it CTE, Mark, and I think it's something that has a lot of names, and but I think it's going to be very, very impactful. Now, with all this interest again in Muhammad Ali, Mark, that something may finally get done headgear-wise. And God bless Dr. Sicking. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. Dr. Dean Sicking is the man who invented the safer barrier for all types of auto racing, where people get to hit the walls without dying. They play in video game auto racing. and they don't die because they hit the walls and the walls absorb the impact. And Mark, you and I were there with Dr. Sicking when I asked him about headgear. And we looked at each other as if we'd just heard Moses come right down the mountain. And you knew, and I looked at you, and we both knew we had heard something so fundamentally changing for sport and sports in general, Mark. And I want you to know that's moving forward. We're working. I know Dr. Sicking is working as we speak, Mark, on getting this headgear ready to keep this from happening again. I would certainly be willing to name it after Muhammad Ali, or do whatever his family would choose. I know Layla has boxed before, and whatever it is, but I would think that if we could do anything, Mark, with our company through Vegas Bets, to name a product that is going to keep people from suffering the same damage that Muhammad Ali did, and simply name it after him. I wouldn't care if we call it the Ali device, and they never say the name Vegas Bets.
Explain the difference between the headgear with the safer barrier technology versus what boxers currently wear in rounds.
Okay, this is pretty simple, Mark. If you put a brick on the side of your head, and something whacks into that, you throw a rock, and that rock hits the brick. It bounces off that brick. You never feel a thing. But if your head and that brick are going in the same direction at the same time, the brick stops before your head does. And that's what helmets basically do. They're hard. They're hard plastic, and they stop, and your head bashes into them anyway. So it does, so boxing headgear does the same thing. It doesn't absorb the impact. It takes some of it, but it takes more of the sting out of it than the power out of it. And it's that power that's transverse, Mark, that rattles the brain on the inside into the skull. And the sidewards motion, where you get hit, you don't get hit right down the pipe hard enough to hurt. The front of your head is built to take that. Not that you want to do that a lot, but it's much more capable of absorbing punishment than the sides of your head. So in boxing, because your arms are on both sides, that's where you throw. And so a punch lands here, and the head snaps that way. And when your head hits the bottom of the arc there, your brain hasn't hit it yet. And it sloshes, and it hits the inside. And that part of your brain is much more susceptible to damage that's visible, speech and movement and those kinds of things. And so if we can't control the head from snapping, the only other option, well, two options. One's no sparring. That doesn't make much sense. So the only viable option, Mark, is to have one that absorbs the impact. It doesn't transfer it over to the skull. So when you get hit, the force just doesn't knock your head as far to the side. We're never going to eliminate concussions completely because of that sidewards motion that's what happens when you get hit. But we can lessen that enough where guys aren't going in with concussions anymore. They've just passed the regulations in Nevada. Guys test before they get licensed, not after a fight. Because if they, I think it's going to, much like the enhanced drug testing for the Olympics, this is going to have an equal, if not bigger, effect in boxing. Because I will tell you right now, there's not many boxers in the elite level. If you've boxed long enough to come through the amateurs and then into the pros, and you're now an elite boxer, you're in the top 10 in one or more boxing organization. It's a very, very rare one that doesn't have concussion after concussion after concussion. And so they can either kill the sport, or they can say, okay, we're going to lower the standards initially, and then we're going to raise them every year after until we've totally eliminated concussions. And the only way I can think to do it, Mark, is to have the exact same thing that happens at the speedway happen on your head. Your head's inside of something that takes the force, and now, hopefully your neck's going to be strong enough, but at least it's not getting propelled at the rate that it was with other headgear. It just simply, have you ever had three pennies, Mark, and you put your finger on the one in the middle and they're all three touching, and you whack the outside one in and it moves the penny on the end? That's what's happening in your brain. So if we can slow that force into that first penny, that's exactly what we're talking about doing with concussions. And I cannot imagine something that's going to be any more effective, knowing what we know about concussions and that sidewards motion of your head. How do you eliminate that in boxing, Mark? We can put them in Hans devices, but that's what we're talking about. So you're talking about if the sport is to continue, it's going to have some very effective headgear, and God bless Dr. Sicking's working on it, and I know this for a fact.
Well, I mean, you're right. When we met with the doctor, and he just kind of looks at you, and go, "Yeah, we can do that," and he will. But it's like, it's. I always like your best description was when we're out at the speedway and they're coming around turn 4, coming into turn 1 at 250 miles an hour. We have no fear of taking that photo because we know if anything happens, that safer barrier, which is only what, 8 inches, 9 inches?
Yeah.
What is it? What is it?
It's 18 inches across, but it's only when my arm is on the wall to shoot, I am less than 18 inches from the impact point of that safer barrier, Mark, and I don't lift my finger off the trigger. It never bothers me in the least. You know what I mean?
Well,
you couldn't be more. And I've been there with Dale Earnhardt turned Brian Vickers into the wall in front of me, Mark, and I got the wreck starting, and then the debris hitting right. I mean, you can tell it hit me. It hit right where it would have mowed me down, and I never felt so much as a flutter. I never felt there wasn't a hair that moved on my arm. And I was where a 3,500-pound car going 160 miles an hour or thereabouts, I was leaning on the back edge of, and never felt anything, Mark.
And the driver walked away.
And the driver walked away. They all walk away. That's what's really cool, Mark.
And now that same technology is going to be shrunk and put into a headgear, so that these boxers, MMA fighters, can practice and show up for a fight refreshed, because
absolutely,
they spent the last week practicing. Their mind is not jumbled. They're ready to fight. They take the headgear off, they step in, boom, the fight. So
well, and the other thing, Mark, is it very much legitimizes the fight itself, because if you go in with if you and I are going to fight, and one of us has a concussion, a pretty serious concussion, and I don't spar, and I try to ignore the fight, so I've at least got a fighting chance. In the first round, the first one is going to reignite that concussion. Now I'm at a much less. I'm much more vulnerable to being hurt. I'm much more probably going to lose, because that has made me a much less capable fighter. So it does detract from the overall product, which is, just on the business side of it, you want your product to be as good as possible. It's like I always say about Deflategate and Tom Brady, Mark. Honest to God, the NFL knows something that can make the game better. By just taking a couple of pounds of air out of a football, you can make it a better game. Why aren't you doing that? Or why don't you let the teams do that? Well, with boxing headgear, Mark, I don't think they're going to have any choice. I think it's going to be mandated. The first moment that we can show that this works, I think it's going to be mandated that they wear some sort of headgear that does what the headgear that I know Dr. Sicking is working on does. And I don't know that there's any way for anybody to replicate it. So, it's an exciting time that way, Mark. It's a shame that people have had to die to bring this or have their life changed so horribly. So, God, I don't know who you would wish that on. You certainly wouldn't wish it on Muhammad Ali if you could have your druthers. There's plenty of guys on death row we could have be in that condition. They're able to talk and move around freely, and Muhammad Ali isn't. So, I'm very, very open, Mark, to somebody who's probably going to have some say-so in the name of the product. I'd be very, very interested in doing something for Muhammad Ali, or in conjunction with him and his family and whoever. So
the other interesting connection to head concussions, Ali and Las Vegas, is the fact that Vegas is now becoming ground zero for Parkinson's disease research, Alzheimer's research with the Lou Rowe.
The Lou Ruvo
Yeah.
Cleveland Clinic Brain Center, and I think, or Center for Brain Health, whatever the official name is. Yeah, they're located downtown here and are the epicenter of a great deal of research, including some treatment, and different cutting edge types of things, Mark. One of a friend of mine is a former lieutenant governor here in Las Vegas named Lonnie Hammergren, and he's the guy with the museum in the backyard, in the front yard, in the basement, and the upstairs, and the next door that he had to buy the house next door to house all his stuff, including an Apollo space capsule. I don't know who the hell you have to know to buy an Apollo space capsule, but the man has one.
It's Lonnie. That's all. That's Lonnie. The only excuse. It's Lonnie.
Before he was the lieutenant governor here in Nevada, he was a neurosurgeon and a neurosurgeon of quite some note. He was, considered an expert, and as such, he was the surgeon on duty when Dooku Kim was brought into UMC in a coma following the fight with Dooku with Boom Boom Mancini, and it was in the 14th round that Dooku Kim went down finally. And Lonnie Hammergren did the operation on him, and I had an opportunity to talk to him about that, and we talked about the concussion part of it, Mark. And he said he said that he never saw an injury that was fatal that was a new injury, and that stuck with me pretty much. And I think that takes us back to where we're talking about what can we do. What can we do to avoid more Muhammad Alis? There are other good men. There are other men of conviction. There are other men that deserve not to suffer a lot of pain and suffering and all the ills that come with what happened to Muhammad Ali simply to entertain us. We don't demand that of our actors, and we feel so bad when a rock and roller is into drugs or whatever. A lot of people, they go hand in hand. But dying, we don't want our auto racers to die, so they go to an engineer like Dr. Sicking and say, "Hey, listen, can you make something?" Now the cars go 250 miles an hour. Our engineers are really good at what they're doing. But now the drivers, we can make the car survive it. We can't make the drivers survive it. What can you do? And they came up with the safer barrier. And technology is going to make these things, Mark, much less a thing of the past if they don't kibosh them in the first place. Because I think technology may show we've been ignoring some of the facts. The NFL has paid a real good PR price over the past few weeks about falsifying some information and directing research funding towards someone they knew was pro their side in this concussion debate, as opposed to Dr. Robert Stern, who I've spoken with out of Boston University, who research takes you where it takes you. That's all. You have a theory, and your theory might either be proved or disproved. But the research takes you, either to your expected point or to somewhere off on the horizon. But you have to do the research, and to skew research in one direction or the other is just, that's as terrible as it can be when people's lives are at stake, Mark. So this is an issue. We could very well see the end of football if somebody doesn't get something figured out. We were going to see the end of auto racing had somebody not figured something out. We're going to see the end of boxing and MMA. My God, the vicious hits that guys take in MMA after a while. They don't have long careers. There aren't guys that have 50 or 60 MMA fights. That's just unheard of, at least in the UFC at the upper echelon. But that damage is still being done, Mark. And if there's something isn't done about it, it's going to be the end of those sports. Because, the Gladiators ended. I'm sure that was cool to watch for a while. But after a while, you said, man, we're going to go watch people die today? Let's just take a walk in the vineyard instead. That seems more peaceful. That seems better. So, sports, would you watch, Mark? If you thought there was a good chance that somebody was going to die, would you watch?
No. Well,
the bloodlust has gone from people. I don't think it's the same as it was.
Well, I mean, the UFC. I mean, when the Freda boys bought it, it was a blood sport. It was you walked into a cage and one of you was going to be carried out, guaranteed. And that's why people didn't want to watch it. When they finally, when the Freda boys bought it and said, okay, maybe we should put
Fertitta.
Frida, okay.
The Fertitta fellas. Yeah,
when they said, okay, let's kind of put some limits on this. Not many, but let's put some limits on this. Yeah. Now it's a sport.
It's taken 23, almost 25 years from when it started in Denver, Colorado with Hoist Gracie and Ken Shamrock to where they are today. And until they got rules and they hired a guy like Mark Ratner to give them that legitimacy that they couldn't have bought for billions of dollars. Yeah, with the rules and everything, Mark, that involvement is there. And that's what I say. You look at that trend, it's from, by the way, speaking of fighters who are just in there to fight and do mayhem, rest in peace to Kimbo Slice. Came out of the, died way too young. He came out of that backyard brawl out there in the parking lot or wherever it was that they could draw a crowd. He was a man amongst boys when it comes to street fighting or whatever, and took it into the ring and was beaten by better technique, but it was certainly not for lack of heart. And we our thoughts and prayers out to Kimbo Slice's family. A very young man, a man who helped. There again, he brought some a great deal of excitement into the world of MMA, and he was a good performer. He gave you your money's worth at damn near every fight I ever saw him in, and even the last one, which was a joke. I forget, the Dada was the opponent. I think it was the guy's name, and I mean, Mark, I would have been a better opponent. You probably would have been a better opponent. I'm just saying, it was not a pretty. I think that was Kim Slice's last fight. But there again, Mark, there's somebody who I think people are going to say, hopefully he'll donate his brain to science, and as people are thinking about Muhammad Ali, and I think you're going to see that. I'll be real surprised if he does not do something magnanimous like that, and for all of humanity, and donate his brain to some research facility. Much like the Lou Ruvo Center. So, yes. Are you telling me I got to shut up now?
Yep. This has been a fun trip. Always, Rick. Always full of information. I mean, that's part of the fun of you. I can just ask you a question on sports, and I can go to lunch.
Where are we going? I got coupons, dude. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. And once again, our thoughts and prayers for Muhammad Ali's family and his legion of fans. I think there's just about as many fans of Muhammad Ali as there are grains of sand on the beaches of the world. And, he was a good man. And if that's all you take from it, we were in the presence of a really good man. And hopefully his next journey is a peaceful one as well. So for all of us here at Good Sports, we wish you well. And we will talk to you again. I'm Rick Rosen. Take care.
Mark Anthony, the Vegas tourist notes and all that are on the show notes on the websites. Talk to y'all later.